Hi, my name is Hyuntae Choi.
Hi, my name is Marco Jimenez, and we are the hosts of Full Cadence Podcast.
Full Cadence believes in the power of the arts to sustain the human spirit. Through sharing stories of young artists in the performing, visual, and literary arts who are making a difference in their communities, we hope to inspire our listeners to examine how they can use their own talents and unique skill sets to do good.
We also aim to forge a network of artists dedicated to their craft and to advancing issues of social justice. Coupled with special episodes exploring the vast world of classical music, Full Cadence ultimately seeks to excite hope and joy in our audience.
If you would like to be featured on this podcast or would like to nominate someone, please feel free to contact us at fullcadencepodcast@gmail.com and follow us on our Facebook page and Instagram, links in the description. Our special guest for this episode is Taylor Wang. Taylor Wang is an emerging artist in Seattle whose work reflects the unique experiences she has gained in adolescence. Taylor hopes to use her art as a vessel to express the fear and uncertainty of growing up as part of an interconnected, socially conscious generation. Taylor runs an art collective called Student Art Spaces when she's not in the studio. According to the Student Art Spaces website, the organization is a, quote, youth-driven platform amplifying the voices of young artists in professional spaces through gallery events and education. Their mission is to break down financial, racial, and gender barriers for underserved artist communities. Student Art Spaces has raised over $10,000 through various fundraisers and opened 21 chapters across the globe. You can find Taylor's art on Instagram at Inkshire Art, and her website, which will be in the description, and her email is taylor.inkshire@gmail.com. Please welcome Taylor to the podcast.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm so excited to speak with you guys.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yes, thanks. Great to have you.
So I was wondering, what inspired you to found Student Art Spaces, and what was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I've been an artist for a really long time, probably since I knew how to pick up a pencil, and I connected with a bunch of fellow youth artists just like you guys when I entered high school, and it was a really eye-opening experience for me because I had never previously been part of that artistic community of people, especially from backgrounds where art is not necessarily considered a viable career path, or even just writing, poetry, dance, any type of performance or entertainment, that industry. So when I entered that community and I was meeting with a bunch of other female artists, BIPOC artists, queer artists, it really helped me find myself at a time when I think I was struggling a little bit, because I went to a high school where most of the people there were white, and I felt very distanced from my culture. I feel like when you're Asian American in a place where it's really white, you kind of tend to like try to distance yourself from being Asian American. And, you know, if your parents like bring you Chinese food for lunch, you'll just like pretend you hate it even though you secretly want to eat it. And so I would have a ton of those experiences where I just like tried to whitewash myself, and eventually coming up with these art and advocacy communities and learning from the mentors, the amazing mentors I've had, that really helped me kind of like reconcile those beliefs and make myself feel confident in the fact that I am queer and I'm Asian and that I want to be an artist. So the idea of Student Art Spaces came when I moved away from that school, actually, and I met another Asian artist who came, and she proposed this idea with me to one of our art teachers that was also like running sort of a studio space in Seattle downtown that could be converted into a gallery. And we asked her if she would be interested in helping us run this youth-led space that's entirely youth curated and youth created art. And so it was amazing. She was able to help us get all of these attendees, like hundreds, on this 3-day event that really spanned a bunch of different places. Actually, we got art from Brazil, Lithuania, New York. it was incredible to see kind of like that fusion of youth talent in that room. And so that idea was not an organization initially. We weren't like jumping into it like, okay, we need to be a nonprofit. We need to like secure like tax deductible donations, whatever. We didn't know any of that like legal jargon. All we wanted to do was start an art collective. And so after that is really when it started getting cooking. Like we got a bunch of DMs from teens who lived in Texas, New York, Los Angeles. They're asking us, like, we saw your gallery and we want to do that in our city as well. So that's when we started thinking like, okay, this initiative really has the potential to expand to kind of like a national, if not international level, because art really is a thing that exists in every single culture, no matter which way you look at it. Like art is something that needs to be appreciated and celebrated in every city, every country in the world. So that's when we started getting that chapters initiative that you mentioned earlier. We got 21 people to create chapters in their city. And from there on out, we just started doing these events all over the world, basically. And, with coronavirus, of course, we haven't been able to do too many in-person events, I would say. But once it all clears up, hopefully when it clears up, we're going to get right back into it with the art galleries and the in-person events. That's really where it counts, So yeah, that's the story of how we started.
Was the process of attracting those 21 chapter heads, were they mostly them reaching out to you after they saw the successful event, your first successful event, or was it more like you also reaching out to them? What was that process like?
We initially had the chapters reaching out to us, and we were like so overwhelmed by the support because we were like, wait, people like actually care about what we're doing. And it was amazing to see that. But afterwards, we kind of started getting a focus on like actually marketing our initiative and trying to tackle those places where art is actually not as prevalent. So, one of our chapter leaders resides in Alabama, and she said she had a really difficult time getting her chapter started simply because the art scene there is not the best, and arts aren't as appreciated as they may be in, say, New York or Los Angeles. So really in those places where arts aren't flourishing as much as they should be, I think those are the places where the most change has potential, because there's just so much to work with, and you really do have like a bit more of freedom in deciding where you want to go, because even though you don't have as many resources, and even though you kind of are starting with like this blank slate almost, you're able to forge your own path and just use youth voices to really ignite these community spaces. So in essence, yes, we started out with people reaching out to us, but eventually it sort of became like this cycle of like we find people as well to lead these chapters in their hometowns.
What gave you the motivation to do this whole thing and see it through from when you and the other artists conceived of it to actually having the exhibition? What was the process like?
Yeah, the whole process, we were balancing a bunch of other stuff at the time, of course, like schoolwork, and I was transitioning away from my old school where I had those kind of traumatic experiences, and so I was dealing with that as well. But through all of that, I think our main motivation was, despite feeling anxious, despite feeling fearful of everything, that like we weren't sure if it was going to go well, we weren't sure if people were going to show up or even care. The main thing that was like keeping us going was just knowing that like our anger at the fact that like youth voices weren't being showcased properly kind of outdid our fear and our anxiety. So that really kept us going. That was like the motivation. That sort of inspired us to get these youth events going no matter what it took. And I would say after the first round, it definitely got easier. We had one show under our belt, and it wasn't as hard anymore. We weren't coming up with like completely new infrastructure for doing the show. We had something like a foundation to work with. So for our second show, Coming Home, we were exhibiting at a city hall this time. It was a government building, and we were able to get the exhibit up much faster. We kind of like just did it like nonstop. So right after our first exhibit, we started planning the second one. So definitely didn't consider like burnout or anything there. We were just going straight at it. Like we didn't think about any type of, break or anything. unfortunately got canceled, I think the day right before opening night. And that was because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the situation breaking out in Seattle particularly. I think Seattle was like the original hub of the virus. So everyone was panicked. Everyone was like going wild at the time. So our opening night got canceled, and that was really disappointing. But all throughout the process, again, like we just kept in mind, like we are going into this with the best intentions. We're trying our best to make these artists feel like they are seen, feel like their voices are heard. And so regardless of what happens, regardless of like how this pandemic is going to screw us over, like we're going to bounce back from it. We're going to kick this back up. And of course we did. We ended up launching that youth publication, Art During a Pandemic. And it was highlighting the voices of youth during COVID-19, just because we felt like that was the immediate struggle that was facing us, because we were all like really, really upset and crushed that our opening night had been canceled. And so the magazine was amazing. It ended up getting nominated recently for a United Nations award, which we're all celebrating that. And then, of course, we opened our chapters as well during that time. So I mean, not the best timing considering there's like a global pandemic happening, but we just kind of like went with it. We just went with the flow, and we let it take us where it wanted to. So whether it was online open mic nights or publications or even virtual galleries, our chapter leaders have come up with a ton of really amazing ideas on their own. And I can't take credit to any of that, but I've seen the amazing things that they've been doing in the virtual space. And I think it's incredible that despite the fact that like these in-person, of course, these in-person spaces can never be replaced, but the fact that they've been able to make do with what they have and ignite something online that's connected people together, I think that's amazing.
How do you think that your experience as an artist has helped you in fighting for justice?
Yeah, I think my experience is definitely not, I would say, like one of a kind. I've had, of course, the I guess what you call the archetypical like struggle of just like being queer at a Catholic school, which is just like not a great, situation to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And so feeling very like repressed from that experience, I guess, and delving into that caused me to delve into art and advocacy communities online and in the digital space, just because that was kind of like my retreat from feeling all these conflicted emotions in real life. And then, of course, added on to that, just like being Asian American, I think that identity for me is really important because I isolated myself from that for so long. And I tried to pretend I was like not Chinese. I was like, pretend I'm like, I'm American. Like, I don't know any of this. I just try not to speak Chinese. Like, I was embarrassed when my mom would like call me by my Chinese name in real life. And that's actually why I changed my name. My name used to be Taylor Wang, but I started using Taylor Yingxi as my artist name, I guess, online, just because I wanted to reclaim that for myself and kind of use that more often. And also just because Wang is really generic and I don't like it. But that is definitely something that's influenced my experience, because I think while going through that was very tough. It also inspired me to kind of forge on in this artistic path and continue letting myself use art as an outlet for me to express myself creatively and really like get to know other artists and their styles and understand how this all works. Of course, when I first entered, I really had no idea, like, how do I use art for activism? How do I use art for social justice? How do I make sure these galleries are inclusive? So me being somebody who also felt like I was very excluded from museum spaces, I kind of just delved into research. I like dived straight in and looked at articles, movies, podcasts, books, previously done research by amazing people who were advocating for art equity in museums and galleries, which is definitely, I would say, my focus right now. And I was able to learn a lot from what they were doing and get some takeaways that helped me put on my own gallery. So that experience, while it was really tough, I think it helped me kind of shape my focus and make sure I was constantly like doing it for the right intentions and not doing it in any possible way for like my own self gain, always doing it for the other artists and making sure that like their voices are heard.
Yeah, I think it's so great that you're able to forge that path when traditionally art spaces aren't necessarily welcoming for minorities.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that you were able to kind of forge that space for yourself. And I was wondering, has art changed the way you see the world, and has the world changed the way you see the role of art?
Yeah, I think art has been a huge factor for me, especially in the last few months in perceiving what I consider to be right, what I consider to be wrong. I think the most prevalent issue right now facing us is just the Black Lives Matter movement and racial equity in all spaces, not just art spaces, but literally every cultural space possible. There needs to be reform. There needs to be not just reform, but like a massive redo of everything that we know. And so I was also grappling with kind of like what I've grown up knowing and what I perceive to be right. And art, witnessing once again all of these art pieces and artists creating and igniting their communities with their artwork. That really helped me kind of reshape my thinking of the world. And I think that art has such an amazing ability to do that for a person in a way that just like, again, like I said before, like things like articles and statistics and all that could never do the same thing emotionally for somebody and transform them in the same way. And so, yeah, I would really like to see, for me personally, I would really like to see more protest art in museums and galleries and kind of digital art in general, just the very accessible format of having your art on computer. You can print it, you can share it very, very easily, have anyone in the world get it. I really like to think that one day we will have that barrier broken between like traditional and digital art versus perceiving, traditional art is like Renaissance, the peak. It's like very elegant and elite versus digital art is more so for the younger generation, not so much worth it in museums and galleries, but in a different type of space. So I really hope one day that we can like merge those spaces and be able to form some kind of new space that is exclusively like, created by young people, able to forge these paths between the two mediums and really just an entirely interdisciplinary experience between all these different art forms that are just as equally valid as each other.
What relationships would you say that you see between art and visual art and then other art forms?
So I'm mostly a visual artist myself, but I even through Young Arts, the program, I've been able to see so many other incredible disciplines, and I'm really thankful that I've been able to have that experience. But I do think that there's a lot of intersections between all of them, and there's a lot of potential for collaboration and creation between these different disciplines. And so while I can't say personally that I do too much like dance or music or anything, I love to get into that, and hopefully in the future I can, once this pandemic settles down. But I see all these amazing like artists out there and working in all different types of mediums, and I think all of them have a really great story to tell, whether it's through motion or film or just your average normal oil painting. I think all of them will have the potential to really like weave a story and get to people's cores, like, and change them in a way. So yeah, I've been really like interested in looking at the ways that interdisciplinary art can do that as well, because I'm trying to get into like sculpture right now and different mediums, just like kind of trying to get creative with it. And once again, that's something that the pandemic has kind of forced me to do, just because there's not like a whole lot of materials in my house right now. So I've been forced to get kind of creative with it and just try to like look for various like scraps of paper in my house, or just find different things to do with what's readily available to me. So that like challenge of trying to seek out something that I can make art with has definitely made me see art in a different way, and see especially like ready-mades and things like that, see it more so in a really artistic and beautiful way. So I feel like I'm really grateful to have the privilege of not having to go out and work right now. Like my job, I can work digitally from home, so I've had more time to hone in on my artistic expressions and the ways that I can do it in different mediums. I know a lot of my other art friends, unfortunately, they do have jobs that require them to go out, and like praying for them. But I really am thankful that I've gotten to use this time to become more in touch with like the artistic side of me, and learn even more about, of course, advocacy and using art for justice movements. So I'm really thankful for everything that's allowed me to I guess pursue my passions in that way. I know that not everyone can do that, and once again, I think I just really like to give back to the community that like mentored me and helped me succeed in this way, in every way possible, just by giving the artists who I think I would have wanted these types of opportunities when I was entering high school, and create those opportunities for people instead of waiting around for them, instead of hearing like, oh, you can do this when you grow up, or like, oh, you can exhibit in the museum when you're like dead, like, or like these artists should be in museums when they're still alive, like they should be honored and appreciated. And so just getting these young artists to feel proud of their work in museums and galleries, that's what I'm all about.
What artists personally would you say you're most influenced by?
That is a loaded question. I have a lot, but I guess if I had to pick a couple, I'm really influenced by Artemisia Gentileschi. She's like a Caravaggioan, I don't know how to pronounce it, but that kind of style, the very chiaroscuro type, and I love her. I think she's amazing. She's again a Renaissance Baroque, that type of era artist, and when I read her story, it really resonated with me because she's a survivor, and she of course, in that time, it's not like there was a Me Too movement or anything. It was like the 1600s. And she went through a trial, I think, because one of her mentors at the art school she was at was jealous of her because she was getting way too talented, way too fast. And they were upset with her. And so they committed some really bad crimes against her. There was sexual assault, there was violence, and I remember she was tortured at her trial because she was, of course, victim blamed. And so that really resonated with me because what I heard afterwards was amazing. She ended up becoming, of course, what we know about her today, one of the most famous artists in that time period, and probably the most famous female one. And so the fact that she was able to recover from that struggle, and I mean, all of her art pieces right now, like if you see them, you can look them up. They're all about just like killing her abusers, getting revenge on them. I think that's awesome. Like she is such an inspiration. And in terms of more contemporary influences, I mean, I honestly can't even name. There's so many artists I look up to, and just a bunch that I think have some really great, unique aesthetics coming through. I guess the one I would point out right now is Hate Copy. I think her real name is Maria, but she's on Instagram, and her @handle is Hate Copy. She does like these comic style, kind of like 1960s pop art type drawings, and except instead of the stereotypical like blonde woman with like cheekbones and like very skinny body, she does Daisy girls, and so I think that was a really cool aesthetic to play around with and see where that goes. And she kind of like does these almost satirical comics of Daisy lifestyles and how these girls like the issues they deal with. And so I would definitely, for everyone listening, make sure to check her out, check Artemisia Gentileschi out. They're two amazing female artists.
Would you say that your inspiration, your creative inspiration, comes more from these past great artists, contemporary artists, or your personal experiences?
I think that's definitely a mix of both. I mean, the contemporary influences I have are all pretty much BIPOC or women and or queer people, and just seeing those types of people break into the art space is really inspiring for me because I really want to model after them and kind of get my own experience into the art space as well. And so looking at those people, I definitely would say that they have had a huge influence on me personally. Looking at their art styles as well has also been something I've wanted to study after, and kind of look into to see how I can improve my own technique and even just my skill as well. So I would say it's a good mix of both, probably even like 50-50, because of course my own personal experiences are very important to my art as well. Pretty much all of my paintings come after experiences I have had in my childhood or in my teenage years. And so yeah, it's definitely just working around looking at these new influences and seeing how they've been able to rise up in the art world, and learning how I can do that myself, feeling like I have the potential to do that myself, and having that confidence, but also keeping original and making sure that my voice shines through above all.
I was wondering, what's kind of like the journey of, I guess, your artistic voice? Could you talk about that a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for asking that. So I think I really only started to develop it like recently, actually. So it's not going to be a long journey, but I of course started off, in middle school, elementary school, just like doodling like every kid does. No real aspiration to pursue art professionally, or even like an understanding of, oh, art is more than just this. Art is like this whole healing process and kind of community building process. I didn't really understand that until after I entered high school, and so that's when my art journey, I would say, really began. I began working at Seattle Art Museum, which is like the big head museum in my city, and I was able to meet a ton of great mentors there, who also coached me in my, not just art style, but my approach towards art museums and galleries. And so, like these experiences kind of culminated in my art process becoming more refined, and me figuring out what kind of message I really want to send with the art. And after that, of course, I mean, like it really spiraled into me getting inundated in these digital spaces and meeting a ton of new people, meeting all these teen artists. Unfortunately, my young art session got canceled before it was supposed to start because of Corona. I was supposed to go to the Los Angeles one, so I wasn't able to meet the people from that realm of my artwork. But I was able to meet a ton of people from these other residencies I was going to, and these other kind of programs. And so it was great to see all these people who are also, on their own art journeys, and that really inspired me to kind of keep pushing forward and actively deciding to pursue a career professionally in the arts, whether that be curator or creator. And of course, both are like difficult for a woman. Both have their disparities, and just being in the art world alone is like very, very scary. But of course, it's once again these communities and this networks online that have really like made me feel confident in my decision. So that's where I am right now. And who knows, like this year is definitely going to be, it's already been a really wild year, and it's definitely going to keep getting more interesting. The elections in November, I mean, I'm too young to vote, but like it's still going to be, I can tell it's going to have a very big cultural significance for our generation. And so just seeing how my art will evolve kind of parallel to these current events, I think it's going to be very interesting to see. And of course, seeing how all these movements and these revolutions are going to adapt and change as well.
You talked a little bit about the power of art in fostering community connections, and I was wondering how you think your role leading student art spaces has changed the way you think about art.
It's definitely been a learning curve. It didn't start out with like suddenly I knew everything about art galleries and art and these disparities that occur within art galleries and museums. So I was really taken aback at just like the loads of information that I was uncovering about everything. And I mean, like just today, I uncovered, I think there was recently the Whitney Museum of Art. The CEO was working with a tear gas company and like selling tear gas or something. So it was really wild to see how all these like major institutions in New York that everyone looks up to and respects and wants to work at, there's a lot of corruption, and there's a lot of just kind of like hatred towards minorities, and especially BIPOC. So I am still to this day coming up with like new revelations, and it almost seems like there's like no institution that is safe, like there's these issues in every single institution. And if you look at the museum boards, I'm going to plug another Instagram, but it's called Show the Boardroom. Everyone should go look at that because it's very eye-opening. It basically is an account that has the lists of every single board member from various major art institutions in the US. So the Met, the MoMA, the LACMA, all of those different institutions. And if you look at them, I mean, I can't say I see too many different shades. It's mostly white people, and it's also mostly male. And so it's very interesting to see not just the leadership, but the board of directors, the trustees, the curators, the directors. I mean, like literally I saw it was like the director of African art was white, and then the director of Asian art was also white, and it made no sense. And so I'm still coming up with like these revelations and like still trying to learn and absorb as much information as possible. But in terms of how it's impacted my views so far, I definitely have a new lens on the way that I have learned art myself. So I did not have any art history classes at my school, unfortunately, but I did take some outside of school coming up, middle school, high school. And I kind of started looking back on that and noticing how a lot of my education focused on Eurocentric art. And it was, even to this day, I mean, like I'm taking an art course right now, and it's very much, the Western Europe, Britain, France, that kind of place where Italy, the Renaissance started. I realized I know almost nothing about like my own country's art, like China. I know literally nothing. And I know nothing about African art, indigenous art, Black art, anything besides, what is considered to be like, I guess, the most immediate thing that needs attention. And so learning about all of these different things, I was really like looking back on my experiences in museums as well, and seeing how I guess I can definitely judge art in a more introspective way than I did before. Before I was kind of just like, oh, this is very nice technically. The message is great, and I didn't look too much into, I guess, like the historical context behind the paintings and why they were there, the reasoning behind, like why are there so many male painters in these museums, in these institutions? Why is there so many white painters? And so when I was really looking back on it, I kind of uncovered this just one thread initially of there is something wrong, and then it turned into this entire tapestry of like, okay, there's something wrong here, there's something wrong here, and that really opened my eyes to like how I should be using my art as well to advocate and to constantly try to push the boundary, and not play it safe, but rather challenge people to think about how they can address not just youth issues like mental health and kind of like these taboos, like just climate change, things that we like to talk about that a lot of adults are uncomfortable talking about, but as well as that, also just these issues with gender equity and racial equity within museums. And so I'm working on a lot of pieces right now for that, and definitely it has inspired me, I would say, to change my art and shift my art to a more political perspective as well. I know I was very scared to get political with my art for a long time because it almost felt like it was breaching some kind of like, some kind of like historical pact or something, because, when you look at like these Renaissance paintings, which I guess is like the first thing you think of when you think art, I feel like most people think Da Vinci, like Mona Lisa, that realm. It's very much, just like humanistic and naturalistic, and your mind doesn't jump to digital art, your mind doesn't jump to like text and graphics and like images, that the very provocative sort of image that you have in protest art and in these kind of challenging ways that people have started. I mean, even since like, I guess the 1960s is when that really started, is just the way that art has rapidly shifted and transformed to help with these movements. And so that's definitely caused me to reevaluate like where my priorities are with my art, and just see where I stand in all of this and how I can be of as much help as possible from my position of being somebody who has the privilege to help out and can't just stand around and do nothing and just let other people do the work. And so yeah, I mean, the main takeaway I guess I had from being the lead of Student Art Spaces is just meeting all these other artists who reached out to me and said this was their first time performing in front of an audience. This was their first time exhibiting their artwork in a professional setting. That really impacted me. And I mean, I think one thing I'll bring up is the first gallery we had. There was a girl. Her name was Claudia Garcia, and she came from Texas. She submitted her work, which was on her pride about being Latina, being a Latino woman. She said she was going to fly out to our opening night actually from Texas, which was wild. And we were so excited because our opening night was the next day. We were reading her email, and further down she said, like, unfortunately, I'm not able to fly over anymore because I experienced a lot of trauma in my family with the El Paso shooting that had happened recently in Texas. And she said that her community, the Latina community, had been impacted and devastated by it. She was staying behind to fundraise using her artwork. She ended off the email, saying, regardless, I'm so proud, especially in this time, to be exhibiting my artwork like in a whole different city, like Seattle, miles and miles away, in a whole new audience. Could not be more proud to showcase my work. And so that really, like, we were like crying at that point. We were like so moved by what she had told us, and that really made us feel prepared for our opening night, which was the next day. And so just knowing that in our hearts, knowing that, like, this was not for nothing, this was not performative, it was really impacting people, and it was really helping out with people who had never exhibited before, with people who had never flown out to anywhere beyond like their state and been in a show or been in a gallery, despite everything that was happening around us.
How do you think art can change society, if at all?
I think it can definitely. I mean, like, from what we've seen, I think it can definitely change society in such a huge way, not just within the art world, but within the culture in general. I would say if you look at even going back to, I guess, when the climate strike movement first started occurring, you have all these artists making work for eco grief and climate anxiety and trying to alleviate that. There's plenty of Indigenous artists out there who have been doing this work for the longest time, and really want to honor them and appreciate their work that they have been tirelessly doing. And I think that in acknowledging, like, the way that art can really shape the world, you've definitely seen over the past few years, like, a rise in, I think, the amount of youth artists who are really stepping up and using their voice, which I think is amazing. That's what I am about. That's what Student Art Spaces is all about. And cannot ever have enough of that, just getting young people into the arts, even if they think that they are not, like, the artistic type. I guess, you still have that kind of like stereotype of like, oh, the jock and the nerd, like the art kid. And so people may or may not like necessarily look down on that in a derogatory way, I guess, still in certain places. And so just looking beyond like the stereotype of the art kid as this specific type of thing, and thinking everyone can be an art kid, everyone can be an artist, everyone can pursue poetry, visual art, dance, music, whatever it is that they want to express themselves with. Definitely it's just a matter of trying those different things and seeing which one works for you. And I think, of course, looking through these different disciplines, not everyone has the ability to buy all these materials. Not everyone has the ability to just like get a piano or like a violin or an instrument. I love to see initiatives popping up that help people with that. I think, these youth-led efforts, it's kind of like a mutual aid effort, like we help you, you help us, exchanging vital information and knowledge about art, as well as helping people who may not necessarily have the ability to get the materials to learn how to do this skill or express themselves in this way. It's all very, very integral, and I love the way that it's evolved from the traditional, what you would call, I guess, mentorship, apprenticeship format that has really reigned for hundreds of years. It's interesting to see how like that has transformed from that sort of hierarchical structure to a more so youth-led base between youth and adults and youth among themselves. So these digital art collectives, these youth art councils, these initiatives that are really supporting themselves with youth-backed efforts. It's all amazing to see, and it's great to see how we've gotten so many youth to engage in the arts, really, not just student art spaces, but every initiative that's been able to do this and impact in some way. And I will say that, the way that art has been able to shift the world is not just because of any one movement or any one organization, nothing like that. I feel like it's been a slow and steady buildup of all these different efforts to push more of that type of art into the world and push all these different narratives into these museums and galleries and really break down those spaces, as well as every other corporate space, every other elite, I guess what you would call exclusive space in the world, and using art to really dismantle that and dismantle systems of oppression that prevent people from entering those spaces. So yeah, in summary, I think art has such an amazing ability to connect people together across languages, across cultures, understanding how a different person's life and their day-to-day, experiences have been through art. And, even just within student art spaces, one of my really close friends lives in Brazil, and she's the engagement director. And I was able to meet her through social media, through student art spaces. And the art she posts, I think, is so revealing of how her life is just so different from mine here in America. And I'm so grateful to be able to see that she does these types of artworks that reflect her daily life in Brazil, internationally, places away from the US that has such a different culture of art and such a different perspective on it. So in essence, not just change the world, but also just connect on a very individual level. So thinking away from that sort of societal shift thing, but more so just individual personal connections between people that art can really foster. I think that's honestly the most important thing.
Yeah, I think that spirit of connection and collaboration is really cool for the youth arts kind of movement. And I was wondering, what advice would you give to artists who want to create these organizations to take advantage of art's unique role in society and able to connect and able to foster change and break down barriers? What advice would you give to artists who want to make those kinds of organizations?
Yeah, I think, you don't even need to make an organization to make that happen. It really just depends on where you want to see yourself going and how you want to impact the existing institutions in your area. So I think people in our age range especially tend to get stuck on that mindset of I need to found something. I need to start something myself. And it's you don't need to do that. If there is an existing project that is very beneficial, then if you join that and you are making a huge impact, that's equally as valid, and if not more so. So I guess my point with that is just for making these organizations, make sure you're going into it with the right intention. Make sure you're doing your research. Don't just hop in and try to do everything at once, because it really does require getting your facts straight, making sure that you're actually impacting the populations that you're saying you're going to impact. And of course, if you do really want to start your own project, and you decide that in my area there's nothing like this, there's no similar initiative that has been done, and I want to make an impact through this way, I would say the first step, honestly, is just to, once you get your research done, establish yourself, make connections, network. Almost all of our amazing events have been backed by local institutions that we'd be able to use as a space. So once again, that mutual relationship of help and support, kind of creating a beautiful gallery in that space, as well as supporting ourselves through these partnerships. And so of course that translates into the digital space as well. If you're thinking of starting an organization right now, you've really got to navigate through the COVID-19 pandemic and consider how you're going to really make an impact while also social distancing, while also making sure that you're not getting anyone in harm's way. And that's a whole different story. I think it's harder now than ever to really try to establish yourself and make a genuine impact while all this is going on and you're not able to even go outside. So I really applaud anyone who's able to do that in this time. I know that we at SAS, we've had we've definitely had trouble trying to shift our focus to that while also maintaining our core mission of uplifting diverse young artists. And so, I mean, I'm part of other groups as well, you know, in my local vicinity, Seattle Art Museum and Teen Tix, Vera Project. These are just a couple local institutions that I'm part of here. And I think getting your foot in by volunteering at these local institutions is definitely a great way to spark some ideas if you're not sure like how you want to impact yet. You know, if you're kind of in that stage where you're very angry about something, but you're not sure what to do exactly yet. And so if anyone is in that stage, I would just recommend going out, maybe not physically going out, but, you know, emailing, DMing people saying, hey, I know you have this organization, like, how do I help out? Is there any like volunteering needs you guys have? Because I can lend a hand, whether that be, you know, digital door knocking or just text, setting up a phone call, going virtually for a coffee. All of those are great ways to establish yourself and kind of understand and grapple with what it is exactly that you're dealing with, whether that's an arts organization or really just any sort of youth-led effort. I think that that people, and I've seen so many that have been started lately, and I think it's great, but also just keeping in mind that, you know, like, what exactly is your impact? What exactly is your purpose in doing this?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because I think there is a misconception that among people our age that you have to be the head of something to make a real impact. But really, it's the common purpose and the common mission that's really making the tangible, significant change.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Taylor, it was so great to have you on. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, guys. This is amazing. And I wish best of luck to you guys' podcast and all of your future pursuits.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You can find Taylor's art on Instagram at ingshi.art, and Instagram and Twitter. All of those links will be in the description, as well as her website. You can contact her after the show at taylor.ingshi@gmail.com. And signing off, this is Full Cadence. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and feel free to contact us via fullcadencepodcast@gmail.com.